Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Pakistan is observing the second anniversary of Operation Swift Retort as Surprise Day. The day is being commemorated to pay tribute to the Pakistan Air Force that downed 2 Indian fighter jets after they violated Pakistan's airspace and captured its pilot wing commander Abhinandan Vardhaman. Addressing a ceremony Air Headquarters, Islamabad Air Chief Marshal Mujahid Anwar Khan said Pakistan's desire for peace should not be misunderstood. Saudi Arabia has rejected U.S. reports' findings that the Crown Prince approved the plan to kill or capture journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. In a statement, Saudi Foreign Ministry termed the report negative and false, saying the journalist's killing was a heinous crime by a rogue group. Earlier, the U.S. sanctioned 76 Saudis, including senior intelligence officials, under a new policy, the Khashoggi ban. President Joe Biden says Iran cannot act with impunity and warned it to be careful after the U.S. airstrikes in Syria. Biden authorized airstrikes on Iranian-backed militia in eastern Syria in response to rocket attacks against U.S. targets in Iraq. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh strongly condemned the strikes. In Iraq, 5 people have been killed during anti-government protests after security forces fired live ammunition to disperse the crowd. Iraqi High Commission for Human Rights said 47 people have been injured during clashes in the southern city of Nasiriyah. The protesters are demanding the removal of Nasiriyah's governor and justice for the protesters killed since 2019. Brazil has reported more than 1,300 new COVID-19 deaths as its toll reached to over 252,000. Pakistan has registered over 1,300 new cases and 33 deaths during the last 24 hours, taking its toll to 12,837. Globally, the coronavirus has claimed over 2.5 million lives and infected over 113 million people so far. And in Pakistan Super League, Karachi Kings are set to take on Multan Sultans today at National Stadium, Karachi. In a later fixture, Peshawar Zalmi will face Islamabad United at the same venue. Earlier, Zalmi beat Quetta Gladiators by 3 wickets in a nail-biting match. They completed the target of 199 runs in the final over. These are the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We start from Pakistan, which is celebrating the second anniversary of Operation Swift Retort, when Pakistani forces responded to Indian aggression. Pakistan Air Force downed an Indian fighter jet for violating airspace and captured its pilot.
Prime Minister Imran Khan said, being a proud nation, Pakistan responded with determined resolve at a time and place of its choosing. In a tweet, Khan said Pakistan showed the world its responsible behavior by returning the captured Indian pilot. He also welcomed the restoration of ceasefire along the line of control. The Prime Minister added the onus of creating an enabling environment for further progress rests with India. Meanwhile, armed forces said Pakistan stands for peace, but it will respond with might when challenged. Addressing a ceremony at Air Headquarters Islamabad, Air Chief Marshal Mujahid Anwar Khan said Pakistan Air Force response to Indian aggression made the nation proud. He said Pakistan's desire for peace should not be misunderstood. Pakistan Air Force jets, including JF-17 Thunder, also presented flypast in the ceremony. In a tweet, the military's media wing said, Pakistan Air Force will always defend the country against all threats. Earlier, the Foreign Office reiterated that aggressors will be met with the same response in case of any misadventure.
Well, Pakistan is observing the second anniversary of Operation Swift Retort as Surprise Day. The day is being commemorated to pay tribute to the pilots of the Pakistan Air Force who downed 2 Indian fighter jets after they violated Pakistan's airspace. Details in this report. It all started after India issued belligerent statements of attacking Pakistan following its false flag operation in Pulwama that killed 40 Indian soldiers. To act on its nefarious designs, the Indian Air Force conducted a strike in Pakistan's town of Balakot, which the Pakistan Air Force promptly responded to the next day. Pakistan Air Force shot down 2 Indian jets that flew 4 kilometers inside Pakistan's territory, violating its airspace.
It was close to 10 in the morning. I heard a loud explosion after our jets broke the sound barrier. I received news on the telephone that our response against the Indian aggression was underway and also the downing of an Indian jet. I ordered my troops to mobilize and sent the quick reaction force to crash site to cordon off the area.
Pakistan Air Force jets shot down India's MiG-21 and another jet Su-30. Pakistan Army caught one of the Indian pilots, Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman, who was being thrashed by a mob of local people.
We rescued pilot Abhinandan, searched him, provided him with first aid, and then brought him to unit's headquarters. Later, we handed him over to military hospital for a thorough checkup. I checked his vital signs and gave him a painkiller and other fluids and addressed his injuries. I kept him at the headquarters for 2 hours to make sure he was okay and had no life-threatening issues. Later, on the instructions of Brigadier Headquarters Director, I took him to another medical facility where he was examined again.
The Indian Wing Commander also acknowledged the professionalism of Pakistan Armed Forces.
At that instant, 2 soldiers of Pakistan Army came and rescued me. One of them, who was a captain, took me to their unit where I was given first aid. Later, I was taken to a hospital for further treated. I find the Pakistan Army a very fine professional force and very chivalrous. I am very impressed by the chivalry which was being displayed by the Pakistan Army.
Pakistan's brave pilots proved their mettle and dominance in the air warfare domain and outsmarted the Indian Air Force.
I was in my unit's area when I noticed a lot of aerial activity. Meanwhile, we heard an explosion in the sector where I saw a MiG-21 Bison plummeting towards the earth as a fireball. I was ordered to take the downed pilot to a secure site.
New Delhi's false flag operation of Pulwama was exposed during the recent chat leaks of Indian firebrand journalist Arnab Goswami. The leak strengthened Pakistan's narrative of striving for peace and laid bare India's hostile activities in the region. Now, for more on this, we have with us Lieutenant General retired Moinuddin Haider from Karachi. Sir, thank you very much for joining us on Indus News Now. Sir, Pakistan is observing the second anniversary of Operation Swift Retort as Surprise Day. How do you see Pakistan's victory over Indian aggression?
Yes, it was certainly an uncalled for aggression by India, because Modi Saab thinks that if he attacks Pakistan or fires on the LOC or takes such action or makes false allegations against Pakistan, the Indians will give them lots of votes. That was his strategy. And for no rhyme or reason, they made Pulwama the reason for this aggression. And now it has been proved beyond any measure of doubt that Pulwama was a false flag operation launched by them And it has been proven, I think India has been greatly embarrassed recently on this issue. And secondly, on this, they went to Balakot, which is Pakistan territory. And they had an embarrassment that their bombers achieved nothing. It was again a great embarrassment for India on their Air Force also, on their professionalism. And thirdly, when they reacted further and aggressed into Pakistan territory with their Air Force, they were shot down. Abhinandan was captured. So all along in all these incidents, they had planned to embarrass Pakistan and to abuse Pakistan and to malign us in the international community. But I think in all three scores, they suffered reverses. And now it is clear that Pakistan is a peace-loving country, but it is always ready to protect its air, skies, and its ground, and its waters. And we have a very professional armed forces. And Abhinandan has confirmed this, that Pakistan Army is very professional, they are very chivalrous, they are very courteous. And this is proved that Pakistani pilots are one of the best in the world, and we are proud of our Air Force and also the other armed forces. We are very proud of them.
Absolutely, yes. Pakistan has been warning the world against Indian false flag operations. Can it repeat the mistake after Pakistan's Operation Swift Retort?
I hope not. I hope they have learned their lesson. And recently, when the two Director General Military Operations of the two armies have spoken to each other, I think India has said that we will try to respect the ceasefire which was announced in 2003 by our Prime Minister Jamali, and it held good for many years. But now, constantly for several years, India has been all the time targeting our civilian population, our property, and there is, they have made it hot. But now I think they have said that we will respect this ceasefire on the LOC, and we will try otherwise to bring down the temperature and try to improve things. Let us hope what they have said, it will be seen in the next few weeks and it will be clear to us. But at the same time, we have to remain prepared and we have to keep our guard up all the time.
Right, absolutely. Well, General Moinuddin Heather, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. Now, viewers, it has been 19 years since a mob of Hindu extremists massacred over 2,000 Muslims in the Indian state of Gujarat. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was the then Chief Minister of the state, turned a blind eye to the violence, allowing the carnage. Let's find out details in this report.
On 27th of February 2002, a fire ripped through a train at Godhra station in Gujarat, burning 59 Hindu pilgrims alive. Although an independent inquiry concluded the fire was accident, Muslims were wrongfully blamed for the blaze. Subsequently, furious Hindu mobs rampaged through Muslim neighborhoods. During the slaughter in Ahmedabad and hundreds of other towns and villages, Hindu mobs rounded up and raped Muslim women. Senior police officers even testified that Chief Minister Modi had ordered officers not to intervene as the killings spread. The bloody riots tarred Modi's international image, leading him to be blacklisted for a decade by the US and the EU. An Indian court found 31 Hindus guilty of murdering 33 Muslims, but most of the perpetrators of violence have gone scot-free. Modi continues to push anti-Muslim policies with moves such as the controversial citizenship law and abrogation of occupied Kashmir's special status. The majoritarian attitude has even extended to farmers who have been protesting against the farm laws for nearly 3 months. Last year, a report by the US Commission on International Religious Freedom categorized India as a country of particular concern over the treatment of minorities.
Still in India, where more farmers are heading towards Delhi borders to join the protests against 3 agriculture laws. Growers from over 700 villages of Punjab are travelling on buses and trains to reach the capital's borders. Farmers have yet another event scheduled for Women's Day on March 8, when women are expected to move to borders. Earlier, United Nations Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet urged India to find an equitable solution to the farmers' crisis. Bachelet also criticized New Delhi's actions against activists and journalists covering the protest. In a statement, she also condemned India's efforts to curb freedom of expression on social media. Now moving to Myanmar, where police have fired tear gas at protesters at the protests to prevent the opponents of military rule from gathering in Yangon. Myanmar's UN ambassador urged the United Nations to use any means necessary to take action against the military. UN Special Envoy on Myanmar's Christine Schraner Burgener warned that no country should recognize or legitimize the Myanmar junta. Meanwhile, China and Russia have pushed back against international involvement in Myanmar affairs at the UN meeting. The country has been largely paralyzed by weeks of protests and a civil disobedience campaign of strikes against the military. Now, Saudi Arabia has rejected US reports' findings that the Crown Prince approved the plan to kill or capture Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. In a statement, the Saudi Foreign Ministry termed the report negative and false. The ministry said the journalist's killing was a heinous crime by a rogue group. It said the US intelligence report contains inaccurate information and conclusions. Earlier, the US sanctioned 76 Saudis, including senior intelligence officials, under a new policy, the Khashoggi ban. President Joe Biden said he told the Saudi king he will hold them accountable for human rights abuses.
I spoke yesterday with the king, not the prince. Made it clear to him that the rules are changing, and we're going to be announcing significant changes today and on Monday. We are going to hold them accountable for human rights abuses.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Washington does not seek to rupture ties with Riyadh. Now, moving on, the coalition forces in Yemen have destroyed a Houthis missile launch towards civilian areas in southern Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the coalition said it is taking operational measures to protect civilians in line with international humanitarian law. This is the third Houthi attack launched towards Saudi Arabia in the last 24 hours. Earlier, Arab coalition thwarted 2 attacks by Houthis, one of which was targeted at Khamis Mushaid city. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden says Iran cannot act with impunity and warned it to be careful after the US airstrikes in Syria. Biden authorized airstrikes on Iranian-backed militia in eastern Syria in response to rocket attacks against the United States targets in Iraq. Earlier, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki said attacks against Americans will not go unnoticed. She added President Biden has the right to take action at the time and the manner of his choosing when there are threats to U.S. interests. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh strongly condemned the strikes. Khatibzadeh described the attack as illegal aggression and a violation of human rights and international law. Meanwhile, the Syrian Foreign Ministry also said the attack in east of the country is a cowardly act. In a statement, it urged Biden not to follow the law of the jungle. Now, in Iraq, 5 people have died after security forces find live ammunition to disperse anti-government protesters. Iraqi High Commission for Human Rights says hundreds of people have been injured during clashes in the southern city of Nasiriyah. It said these include several members of the security forces who got injured as protesters retaliated to fires. Following the deaths, Iraq's Prime Minister has removed the governor of the province, which was one of the major demands of the protesters. Now, nearly 600 people have been killed in protest-related violence in Iraq since late 2019. Now, the European members of the UN Security Council have called on Israel to stop the demolitions of Bedouin settlements in the Jordan Valley. The UK, France, Ireland, Norway and Estonia issued a joint statement at the end of a monthly session of Security Council on the Middle Eastern conflict. The statement expressed concerns at recent demolitions and confiscations of donations by Israeli authorities in the Jordan Valley. It called on Israel to allow full, sustained and unimpeded humanitarian access to the community in Al-Hamsa Baqaya. The Jordan Valley is a strategic patch of land that has emerged as a flashpoint in the struggle over the West Bank. Now moving on, Brazil has reported more than 1,300 new COVID-19 deaths as its toll reached to over 252,000. While globally, the virus has claimed over 2.5 million lives and infected over 113 million people. More on coronavirus in this report.
The shortages of coronavirus vaccines causing more global divides and skepticism over certain vaccines are proving to be the major obstacles in battle against pandemic. In Brazil, prosecutors are seeking suspension of purchasing India's COVID-19 vaccine over concerns that it has not yet completed its phase 3 clinical trials. This came as rising cases filling Brazil's intensive care wards to the brim forced its capital city to impose a lockdown. In U.S., President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion plan to address the toll of pandemic has been advanced to the House of Representatives for debate. Food and Drug Administration's advisor panel voted in favor of authorizing Johnson & Johnson's vaccine for emergency use. Meanwhile, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's head said a recent decline in COVID-19 cases may be stalling.
Over the last few weeks, cases and hospital admissions in the United States had been coming down since early January, and deaths had been declining in the past week. But the latest data suggests that these declines may be stalling, potentially leveling off at still a very high number. We at CDC consider this a very concerning shift in the trajectory.
The UN Security Council has demanded the parties to all conflicts to engage immediately in sustained ceasefire to allow for vaccinations. World Health Organization says countries making individual deals for vaccines threaten supply for COVAX program for developing countries. Meanwhile, European countries are urging public to take AstraZeneca's vaccine, seeking to stem skepticism about its effectiveness that is leaving many supplies unused.
If I look at the numbers, I believe that it's to do with the organization giving out appointments until we get things underway better in all the federal states. We are also familiar with the discussion that there may be a few people who aren't taking up the offer of a vaccine. We urgently advise people to get vaccinated. This vaccine is safe and effective. It offers protection just like the other two vaccines.
The Czech government has also announced strict new restrictions over the next 3 weeks to slow the fast spread of infections. Meanwhile, G20 nations have warned against the uneven distribution of vaccines as leaders consider how to create even footing for recovery from the pandemic.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 33 more patients of the novel coronavirus have died overnight. The Health Ministry says the nationwide death toll has risen to 12,837. The ministry said over 39,000 tests were conducted in the past 24 hours, of which 1,315 returned positive. So far, nearly 579,000 people have been infected in the country, while over 544,000 have recovered. The ministry said the number of active cases stands at 21,554. It said the number of patients admitted to hospitals has dropped below 2,000. Moving on now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has visited Mexico and Canada virtually in his first official foreign trip. Blinken has started the new chapter in American diplomacy due to the pandemic. Blinken's meetings with Mexicana and Canadian officials covered economic grounds as well as efforts to fight COVID-19. In a meeting with his Mexican counterpart, Blinken said he visited Mexico first to demonstrate the importance Washington attaches to its southern neighbor. He also addressed immigration, saying the U.S.-Mexico border is closed only to irregular migration. Meanwhile, Canadian Foreign Minister welcomed the new U.S. administration's commitment to renew leadership and diplomacy. Now, in Denmark, dark winter skies have brightened up as the annual Light Festival is underway in the Danish capital, Copenhagen. Let's find out more in this report.
The extremely expressive yet quiet Copenhagen Light Festival has provided citizens with much-needed light during the cold winter season and stressful times due to the pandemic. Visitors are enjoying the illuminated buildings and artwork at the 23-day festival in the Danish capital, while also adhering to the coronavirus safety precautions.
I think it's really just what people need right now, sort of a grown-up treasure hunt, moving from one piece of art to another, each of them inviting for a moment of reflection, having a thought about, what life is about these days. And I think that has been taken down very well by our visitors.
The light installations are mostly located in and around Copenhagen city center. Amid COVID-19, guided tours, talks, and pop-up events have been cancelled this year. However, they have been replaced with an interactive map to help the visitors in finding their routes and information about the light installations in the city.
We have no enclosures or things that forces people to be together. They can watch it from a distance, or they can go on the other side of the canal. So there's a big area and many routes that they can choose from. Also, we have the app that guides people so that they can find their own way and their own tempo. So we have no problem with people getting too close.
The festival is taking place for the 4th year now, and around 30 light installations have been placed around Copenhagen.
Now, in Pakistan Super League, Karachi Kings are set to take on Multan Sultans today at National Stadium in Karachi. Kings are 4th on the points table with 2 points, while Sultans are on the bottom with these same points. Both teams have won only one match each. Meanwhile, the top team, United, who has won all 2 matches so far, promises to give a tough time to second-placed Zalmi. In a later fixture, Peshawar Zalmi will face Islamabad United at the same venue. Earlier, Zalmi beat Quetta Gladiators by 3 wickets in a nail-biting match. They completed the target of 199 runs in the final over. And with that, we come to the end of this news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.